see my fellow missionaries, that's your mission and that's my mission. We can build these little bit of heaven, and we should be able to say that everyone who passes by our way walks away a little better and a little happier. If we do that, it'll impact in every part of the world. It'll touch the world that I go back to today, the world of Haiti. And as you may know, Haiti is considered one of the poorest places on earth. And where I live and work is one of the most destitute areas of that poor country. I live and work in an area called the City Soleil slum. There are 500,000 people. I'm the only priest there. We have no electricity, no running water, very little sanitation. You stand there, your feet literally sink into the sewage. I live in an area where there's no electricity, but also there's all sorts of sounds and smells that are a bit overwhelming. I have a rat population 10 times that of the people. The oldest child stays up at night with a stick to keep the rats away. But those things you learn how to deal with. What's difficult for me, and I know it would be for you, is to see the children. Because the children are dying. 50% of our children will die before their 5th birthday. If you were to go back with me today and tomorrow, you would see thousands of children with bloated stomachs, filled with worms. Children have a certain stare in their eyes. Children whose hair that should be black, turning an ugly color of orange, which is a sign of acute malnutrition. Children whose skin looks as if it's been severely burned. It's acute malnutrition. And then you look at the women. The women age in front of you. And they age because it's unnatural for a mother to watch her child die. I don't know any women in Haiti that have not lost at least one child. Every day I have to sometimes pull babies away from women. They're begging me to tell me their child has not died and it has. This is an area where the New York Times has documented that the women out of desperation who see every day will take some spices or maybe some sugar or salt, put it in mud, mix up the mud, cut it up, put it out on the ground, and when it dries, they give it to their children. They don't realize that this mud has deadly parasites that even can make life worse for them and for their children. This is an area where I sat on praying Mass not long ago, and I say Mass every morning for Mother Teresa's sons. There was a terrible stench in the chapel, and when the sun came up, we found the body of a little girl who had been eaten by rats and dogs. These images are disturbing, and yet they have to be there, and they should disturb us. And every day we try to help, and it's very difficult. Whenever I get an invitation to come to a parish, I come immediately. And some of my fellow missionaries, whatever help you can give in the second collection today, I promise you every bit will go to help those people. Now at the same time, I may appear that I'm contradicting myself, and in many ways I am. And I say this with great respect. But in some ways you can keep your money. Really. Because I don't think it's going to do any good. And maybe I am a little bit cynical, but maybe you should just take that money and use it for something locally or somewhere else. And the reason I say that is because I think there's always going to be children dying of starvation in our world. There's always going to be divisiveness and fragmentation. There's always going to be ugly bigotry. There's always going to be deprivation. There's always going to be violence and terrorism. There's always going to be addiction to alcohol, drugs, pornography, probably right in this very parish. There's always going to be the alienation of the young, abuse of the elderly, and husbands leaving wives and wives leaving husbands. Why is that so? Because we've been very naive as a people. We're naive enough to embrace a culture that may be toxic. We're naive enough to embrace a culture that may be mutilating our very spirits. A culture that makes it difficult for us to make decisions. We're naive enough to embrace a culture that encourages self-absorption and narcissism. What we got to do is we got to learn how to make decisions and take responsibility for ourselves. So what I'm asking you to do, and the reason why I came from Haiti all the way here, it's not for money, but to ask you to pray. Ask you to pray like more than you've ever done in your life. And say, Lord Jesus, what is it that you want of me? And I believe the Lord will say to some of you, I want you to grow up. I want you to have the courage to stand on your own 2 feet. And for some of you who haven't done it in your lifetime, I want you to leave this church today and stand on your own 2 feet and see the world as it truly is. All that's good, yes, but all that's evil. All that's beautiful and all that's ugly. And say, Lord Jesus, help me to overcome my addictions. Help me to overcome my build that little bit of heaven in my space. Help me take responsibility for my space and time. And how is that translated? Those of you who are married, fall in love with one another again. Care for one another again. Listen to one another again. Hold one another again. See in one another a little bit of heaven. And I can see in your face you're saying, that husband of mine's a pain in the neck. But guess what? You wives aren't so hot either. And so you've got to make your marriage work. You've got to make it work. And those of you who are single or widow, please don't curse the moment on why you got needs you today to build that little bit of heaven. Then you turn to your children and your grandchildren. Let them know they're loved. Let them know they're special. Let them know that they're your little bit of heaven. Put your arms around them all. Teach them to love others. Teach them to love people of different races and backgrounds and religions and nationalities. Teach them to see beauty and deem it worth remembering. Teach them to have a love for Jesus Christ and the Scriptures. Above all, teach them to be secure about themselves, always honest. And if you do that, you're going to build little bits of heaven. Now, the problem you have for your parents is you have a culture out there that's going to fight you. A culture that cleverly markets the idea that if your children don't like you, you're doing something wrong. Dear parents and grandparents, have the courage in today's Mass to courageously decide now that you'll no longer spoil your children. Stop giving them everything they want. Be able to say no to them. Give them less at Christmas and less for their birthdays. Stop giving in to them every time they want something. Teach them that life isn't always easy, you see, and sometimes they have to live without. Sometimes they have to climb some mountains in their life. Sometimes they may not even get to the mountaintop. I challenge you, dear parents out there, to put your arms around your children today and say, we got good news and bad news. The good news is you're a little bit ahead. The bad news is we're not buying you a car when you're 16. You're going to buy us one someday. And I hope I don't offend anyone out here, but to tell you the truth, I find the weddings here in the United States absolutely ridiculous. If you ever see the father of the bride, it looks like he's been modeled. Have the courage now to say, you'll be lucky if you get a cake. Have the courage to change those celebrations in your own family. Have the courage to stand up and not have a culture dictate to you how you spend your money. Have a culture to be able to take that money and use it more effectively later on in your lives. Dear parents, stop forcing your children to be winners. This is also very much a part of our culture. I was chaplain at Princeton University until '96. Many of those extraordinary young people suffered because of the expectations parents placed on them. Stop telling your children they ought to be winners. They have to win every race, get every award, be the tallest tree in the forest, get all A's, get the highest SAT score, get into the most prestigious university. And don't put those little stickers on your car saying my son or daughter was honor student. What if he's a loser? Who cares? Put your arms around your children today and look at them and say, you are already winners. God determined your worth before you were ever born. If you do that, you're going to be creating